Have you ever watched a child do what hundreds of experts couldn't? A billionaire's son lay dying in a Manhattan hospital when an
Thank you
8-year-old
so
girl
much.
in worn
You saved
sneakers
my life.
whispered 3 words
You are welcome.
that changed everything. If you've ever witnessed a moment that restored your faith in humanity, this story will speak to your heart. Tell us, where are you watching from tonight? Drop a comment below and stay with us until the very end. It was the kind of winter night New York never forgets. The city lights dimmed under a silver sheet of snow, and somewhere high above Fifth Avenue, the pediatric ICU of New York Presbyterian pulsed with sterile light and fear. Inside room 407, the steady hum of machines kept time with a desperate father's heartbeat. 6-year-old Noah Crawford, the only son of billionaire tech mogul Ethan Crawford, lay motionless on the bed. His small chest rose in uneven breaths, each one weaker than the last. His lips had turned the color of a bruise, deep violet, unnatural, terrifying. Around the bed, doctors and nurses moved with precision and panic, disguised as professionalism. The air reeked of antiseptic and exhaustion. Dr. Patel, the chief specialist, murmured to his colleagues, "We've ruled out infection, metabolic issues, every known toxin. There's nothing left to test." Ethan's voice broke through like gravel over glass. 280 doctors, he said quietly, his hands trembling at his sides. "And not one of you can tell me why my son is dying." He had spent a lifetime solving impossible problems, creating algorithms that predicted markets, building companies that conquered continents. But now, in this sterile room, money and logic had both abandoned him. His once polished suit was wrinkled, tie loosened, eyes rimmed red. He looked less like a billionaire and more like a man unmade. A nurse adjusted the IV line. The fluid dripped steadily, a translucent thread of hope. But Noah's monitor suddenly spiked. The alarms blared. His body convulsed. "Get epinephrine ready," someone shouted. "His oxygen's dropping." Ethan pressed a hand to his mouth. "Please, please, not my boy." Then, amid the chaos, the door cracked open. A small voice said softly, "Excuse me." Heads turned. In the doorway stood a girl no more than 8, with dark braids, a faded denim dress, and sneakers worn almost white. Behind her, a woman in a hospital janitor's uniform appeared, flustered and apologetic. "Lila," the woman whispered harshly. "You can't be here." The girl stepped forward anyway, eyes fixed on the bed. "His lips are purple," she said matter-of-factly. "And the liquid in his mouth looks purple too." Dr. Patel frowned, startled. "Young lady, this is a restricted area." But Lila didn't stop. She looked at the IV line, her brow furrowed with an intensity far beyond her years. "That medicine bag? What's in it?" The mother, Elena Rodriguez, tried to pull her back. "I'm sorry, sir. She was waiting in the break room while I cleaned. She must have..." Ethan's voice cut through the tension. "Wait." The girl turned to him. Their eyes met his, hollow with fear. Hers, steady and unafraid. "What did you say about the medicine?" he asked. Lila hesitated. "It reminds me of something I read in a science book. My neighbor's dog ate purple berries once. It couldn't breathe. The vet said the berries were toxic." "Toxic?" Dr. Patel echoed, dismissive. "Mr. Crawford, this is hardly..." Ethan's tone sharpened. "Could it be a drug reaction? Something with the new antibiotic?" The nurse looked up. "We did add Lincoln yesterday for a secondary infection." Dr. Patel flipped through the chart. "That's standard. Check it," Ethan snapped. Now, within minutes, blood samples were rushed to the lab. The monitors beeped, the room holding its breath. Ethan knelt beside his son, brushing hair from his damp forehead. Noah's skin glistened with sweat. "Hang on, buddy. I'm right here," Ethan whispered. At the far corner, Lila clutched her mother's hand. "He'll be okay," she said quietly, almost to herself. When Dr. Patel returned, his face had changed, the certainty gone. "She was right," he said slowly. "The child's body is reacting to Lincoln, a genetic anomaly causing severe toxicity. It's rare, 1 in a million. Ethan's voice cracked. You're saying that drug was killing him? Dr. Patel nodded grimly. We're switching to plasma filtration immediately. If we're lucky, we caught it in time. Nurses scrambled. The IV was changed, machines adjusted. For long minutes, no one spoke. Then faint, but real Noah's breathing steadied. His chest rose evenly. The purple hue drained from his lips. A nurse exhaled audibly. He's stabilizing. Ethan slumped against the wall, shaking, laughter and sobs tangled in his throat. He looked up at the little girl. You just saved my son. Lila blinked, unsure how to respond. I just remembered something I read. Sometimes that's all it takes, Ethan whispered. Elena tried to pull her daughter back again. Sir, we'll leave now. I'm so sorry. No, Ethan said firmly, standing. Stay. He crouched to Lila's height. What's your name? Lila Rodriguez, she said softly. He smiled faintly. Leela. You have a gift. Dr. Patel cleared his throat. Mr. Crawford, we're transferring Noah to observation. The crisis seems over. Ethan nodded but didn't take his eyes off the girl. Noted, Doctor. Thank you. As the doctors filed out, silence returned heavy, but no longer hopeless. Elena, still mortified, whispered to Lila in Spanish. Mija. What were you thinking? Lila looked down. I just didn't want the little boy to die, Ethan overheard. The words hit him harder than any medical fact. He turned toward them, his voice low. Neither did I. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a business card embossed in silver. If you ever need anything, call me. Anything. Elena hesitated before accepting it. We don't need charity, sir. Ethan's gaze softened. This isn't charity. It's gratitude. A few minutes later, mother and daughter slipped out of the gleaming hospital wing, their footsteps echoing down the marble corridor. The automatic doors closed behind them, sealing them out of the world of glass and power. Outside, snow was still falling, the flakes swirling in the city lights. Elena's breath fogged in the cold. She took her daughter's hand tightly. Don't ever do that again, Lila. You scared me. But he was dying, Mama. Elena sighed. I know, but we're not like them. People like us don't just walk into rooms like that. Lila looked up at the snow. Maybe we should. Her mother didn't answer. The city roared faintly below them. Sirens, laughter, horns, the heartbeat of New York. Indifferent, yet alive. Back inside the hospital, Ethan stood alone by the window of room 407, watching the snow blur the skyline. Noah slept peacefully, for the first time in weeks. The machines hummed in soft rhythm, like a lullaby. Dr. Patel returned quietly. Mr. Crawford, your son's vitals are improving. He's going to make it. Ethan exhaled, his body sagging with relief. Thank God. Patel hesitated before adding, the girl's observation. It wasn't luck. She saw what we all missed. Ethan nodded slowly. Sometimes the truth doesn't come from where we expect it. He stared at the empty doorway, replaying the image of the small girl with the steady eyes. In her, he had seen something he couldn't name. Brilliance. Courage. Maybe even purpose. He thought about how her mother's shoes squeaked from cleaning chemicals, how her coat was too thin for the weather. People like them usually went unnoticed in rooms like his. Tonight, one of them had saved his world. As he turned back toward his son, his reflection flickered in the hospital window, one half illuminated, the other swallowed by shadow. Outside, the snow kept falling, covering everything equally, the wealthy towers and the worn-out rooftops of the Bronx alike. Ethan whispered, more to himself than anyone else. Who are you, Lila Rodriguez? Then, a faint sound broke the stillness, the soft vibration of his phone. A message from his security team. Unknown minor entered restricted floor. No record in visitor system. Possible breach. Ethan's eyes narrowed slightly. He looked again at his sleeping son, then at the snowy skyline. A quiet storm was already gathering beyond that hospital window, and neither of them knew that the girl who saved his son's life would soon change his own. Morning came to the Bronx in shades of gray. The cracked sidewalks glistened from last night's snow, and a thin line of steam curled up from the rooftops. Inside apartment 3B, the Rodriguez family stirred awake to another long day. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms for 4 people walls, patched with old wallpaper and covered with drawings and honor roll certificates that fluttered when the subway rumbled beneath the street. Elena Rodriguez moved quietly, careful not to wake her youngest, Mateo, who slept curled under a blanket dotted with cartoon rockets. She carried the weariness of someone who'd worked every day for 20 years without ever catching up. Her hands were rough from bleach and soap. Her back ached, but her eyes were soft whenever they landed on her children. The smell of instant coffee and fried eggs filled the kitchen. "Morning, Mama," came a small voice. Lila, already dressed in her school uniform, sat at the table surrounded by notebooks. At 8 years old, she had the focus of someone far older. Her hair was braided neatly, her uniform a little big, her eyes bright behind cheap plastic glasses. "You're up early again," Elena said, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. "I'm reviewing my science project," Lila replied. "The state fair finalists are announced next week." Elena smiled faintly. "You'll win, mija. You always do." But there was a heaviness under her words. Winning didn't pay for materials or bus fare to the fair. The scholarship program covered part of the tuition at the gifted school Lila attended, but the rest, uniforms, lunches, field trips, ate into rent and grocery money. Lila seemed to sense her mother's thoughts. "Don't worry, Mama. I'll build something that makes money one day. Maybe a machine that cleans floors by itself so you can rest." Elena laughed softly. "Someone already invented that, sweet girl." "Then I'll make one that doesn't break after a week," Lila said with a grin. The door creaked open. Sophia, 16, shuffled in wearing earbuds and a hoodie that said Bronx Community High. She glanced at her little sister, with the faint irritation of an older sibling, overshadowed too often. "Of course she's studying again," Sophia muttered. "Does she ever do normal things like watch TV?" "I like learning," Lila said simply. Sophia rolled her eyes. "Yeah. Well, good luck saving the world with your books." "Enough, Sophia," Elena said. "Eat your breakfast. I'm already late." When the clock struck 6:45 a.m., Elena tied her hair into a bun, wrapped a scarf around her neck, and slipped into her faded cleaning uniform light blue with a white collar. It still smelled faintly of disinfectant no matter how often she washed it. As she gathered her supplies, her phone buzzed. A message from her supervisor. "Rosa's out sick. Need you to cover her shift at the hospital tonight. Double pay." Elena exhaled. Another 16-hour day. She scribbled a note on a torn envelope and left it on the table. "Lila, go to Sophia's after school. Love you, Mama." By the time she arrived at New York Presbyterian Hospital, the city had shaken off its morning chill. The hospital lobby smelled of coffee, sanitizer, and quiet money marble floors. Gold plaques. A place where lives could be saved if you could afford the price. Elena swiped her ID and grabbed a mop bucket. Cleaning had never embarrassed her. What stung was when people looked through her, as if the uniform made her invisible. That afternoon, her supervisor approached. "Elena, change of plans. The VIP, pediatric suite, needs a deep clean. Mr. Crawford's boy is recovering. He's very particular." Elena froze. Crawford. That name. She hadn't forgotten the man with tired eyes and the silver business card. The night her daughter walked into that ICU had replayed in her mind 100 times. "Yes, Mum," Elena replied quietly. When she reached the private wing, she could hear laughter through the door, the light, sweet sound of a child. She hesitated, then knocked. "Come in," a familiar male voice said. Ethan Crawford stood by the window, his posture less rigid, the darkness around his eyes lighter than before. On the bed sat Noah, alive, rosy-cheeked, holding a tablet and smiling. "Mr. Crawford," Elena began nervously, clutching her mop handle. "I'm here to—" He turned, his face softening. "You're the woman from that night." Elena swallowed. "I am. I'm glad your son is well." He nodded slowly. "Because of your daughter." Before she could reply, Noah piped up. "Is she here? The girl who saved me?" Elena shook her head. "She's at school, honey." Ethan smiled at his son, then looked back at her. "I'd like to thank her, and you properly." "That's not necessary," Elena said quickly. She noticed something." "Something none of us did," Ethan said. "That's more than something." He took a deep breath, as if deciding something. "Mrs. Rodriguez, may I ask, does Leela have the opportunity to study somewhere that truly matches her potential?" Elena hesitated. "She's in a gifted program, but we struggle with the costs." Ethan's tone softened. "Then let me help. My foundation sponsors students in science and innovation. Lila would be perfect." Elena's pride and fear collided. "Mr. Crawford, I appreciate it, but we don't take handouts." It wouldn't be a handout," Ethan said. "It's an investment in brilliance." Before she could respond, Noah tugged his father's sleeve. "Dad, can she play Minecraft with me when she visits?" Ethan chuckled. "Only if she teaches you how to build faster." For the first time in months, the room felt human laughter mixing with the rhythm of heart monitors. Ethan turned back to Elena. "Please, think about it. I'll have my assistant contact you. Let's make sure your daughter gets the chance she deserves." Elena nodded slowly, torn between disbelief and gratitude. "Thank you, sir." That evening, as she walked home through the Bronx, snow began to fall again, lazy flakes dancing through the yellow glow of streetlights. The cold bit her cheeks, but her heart felt oddly warm. At home, Lila was waiting at the kitchen table, homework spread out like a small battlefield of papers and pencils. "Mama, you're late again." "I know, mija." Elena set down her bag, rubbing her sore wrists. "I saw the man from the hospital today." Lila looked up, curious. "The one with the sick boy?" "Yes. He said he wants to help you go to a special school." Lila frowned. "Why?" "Because you saved his son's life." Lila's eyes widened. "I didn't save him. I just noticed something." Elena smiled faintly. "Sometimes, noticing is saving." From the bedroom, Sophia called out, "So now we're charity cases for rich people?" Elena sighed. "Sophia, please." But Lila looked thoughtful. "If he wants to help me learn more, maybe that's okay. Maybe he just wants to say thank you." Elena studied her daughter's face, the mix of innocence and intelligence that frightened her sometimes. "Promise me, Lila, that no matter where you go, you remember who you are." "I know who I am," Lila said softly. "I'm your daughter." Outside, the wind howled, carrying sirens from a distant street. In the window reflection, Elena saw her little girl's face against the lights of the city, half in shadow, half in promise. She didn't know that miles away, in a penthouse overlooking Central Park, Ethan Crawford was staring at a scholarship application file on his desk, a photo of Lila clipped to the corner. He whispered to himself, "You changed my life once. Let's see what happens next." Well, but on another side of the city, under a flickering street lamp near the Rodriguez building, a man watched from a parked car. His coat collar was turned up, his eyes following the apartment window where Lila's silhouette moved. He lifted his phone, snapped a photo, and murmured, "So that's where you are." His voice was low, bitter, carrying the weight of regret and greed. Carlos Rodriguez slipped the phone back into his pocket, started the engine, and drove off into the night, his headlights cutting through the falling snow like two sharp eyes that had just awakened. The first day of March arrived with the scent of rain over Manhattan, that cold metallic air that promised change. For Lila Rodriguez, it began like any other morning in their Bronx apartment. cereal with powdered milk, Sophia rushing out the door, and her mother's quiet hum over the coffee pot. But that day was different. A thick white envelope lay on the kitchen table, embossed with a golden crest that shimmered faintly under the weak morning light. Lila stared at it, half afraid to touch it. "It says Crawford Foundation," she whispered. Elena wiped her hands on a towel and sat beside her. "Go ahead, Mija. Open it." The letterhead smelled faintly of cologne and paper, more expensive than anything that had ever been in their home. Lila unfolded it carefully, eyes widening as she read aloud. "Dear Miss Rodriguez, it is our honor to inform you that you have been selected to receive the Crawford Foundation Fellowship, a full scholarship to Westbridge Academy for Advanced Studies in Manhattan." Her voice faltered. "Westbridge?" she whispered. Everyone at school talked about it. The kind of place where future inventors, scientists, and leaders were made. Elena blinked hard, struggling to process the words. "Full scholarship? They'll pay for everything?" Lila nodded slowly. "Tuition, books, housing, even transportation." She looked up, confused. "Why me?" Elena exhaled. "Because sometimes miracles choose people who don't expect them." 2 days later, they stood inside the marble lobby of the Crawford Foundation. The glass walls stretched up 30 stories, reflecting the skyline like a second sky. People in suits moved with purpose, badges clipped to perfect blazers. Elena smoothed her thrift store jacket, whispering, "I don't belong here." Lila slipped her hand into her mother's. "Yes, you do." The elevator opened with a soft chime, and a woman with sleek blonde hair and a tailored gray suit greeted them. "Mrs. Rodriguez? Miss Lila? Mr. Crawford is expecting you." When they stepped into the executive suite, the contrast felt surreal. Floor to ceiling, windows framed Central Park like a painting. A grand piano sat in the corner, beside a wall of awards. Ethan Crawford rose from behind his desk, his expression warm but precise, like a man used to commanding rooms but trying not to intimidate. "Mrs. Rodriguez." "Lila." Elena nodded awkwardly. "Thank you for inviting us, Mr. Crawford." "I don't know what to say." I start with hello," he said gently, smiling at Lila. "You look taller since I last saw you." She grinned shyly. "I've been drinking milk." Noah, his son, peeked out from behind a chair, holding a tablet. "Hey, you're the girl from the hospital." Lila laughed. "You look way better now." He puffed his chest. "I'm strong again. Dad says it's thanks to you." Ethan cleared his throat. "It's thanks to a moment of clarity and courage. You saw what others missed." He gestured to a folder on his desk. "This fellowship will open doors that should have always been open for you, Lila. Westbridge Academy is one of the best. You'll meet mentors, innovators, people who can help your gift grow." Elena hesitated. "Mr. Crawford, I appreciate your kindness, but I'm afraid we can't accept something this big." Ethan leaned forward. "Mrs. Rodriguez, you're raising a once-in-a-generation mind. My foundation doesn't give charity. We invest in potential. Lila's future isn't a gift. It's a responsibility." Lila looked between them, her small hands twisting the strap of her bag. "Will it mean we have to move?" Ethan smiled. "Only if you'd like. I keep a small apartment near the academy. It's closer, safer, and it's empty most of the time. You're welcome to use it." Elena's heart pounded. "Sir, that's too much." "It's practical," he said. 2-hour commutes don't build futures. And you'd be closer to your daughter." She met his eyes and saw not pity, but sincerity, the kind that came from a man who'd lost something irreplaceable and wanted to make meaning from it. "I'll think about it," she said quietly. "That's all I ask." 1. As they turned to leave, Noah called out, "Lila! Wait!" He handed her a small box, wrapped in silver paper. She opened it to find a tablet, brand new, latest model. "I can't take this. It's for your projects," Ethan said. Consider it a tool for your brilliance. Lila looked up at him, a shy smile curving her lips. Thank you, Mr. Crawford. He crouched down so his eyes met hers. Call me, Ethan. Huh. That evening, back in their Bronx apartment, Elena read the letter again under the dim kitchen light. Sophia stood by the counter, arms crossed. So, now he's buying us off? Lila frowned. He's not buying us. He's helping. Yeah, sure. Rich people always help without wanting something back, Sophia said bitterly. Elena's voice was tired but firm. Enough. We're not going to question kindness. Sophia huffed, retreating to her room, muttering, Whatever. Genius girl gets another miracle. The slam of her door echoed through the small apartment. Elena sighed. She doesn't mean it. Lila nodded, but her shoulders slumped. Maybe she's right. Maybe it's too much. Her mother placed a hand on her cheek. Mija, when the world finally notices you, don't shrink. Stand tall. You earned this. Lila smiled faintly. I'll make you proud. You already have. Outside, the city lights blinked, like stars trapped under glass. 3 weeks later, they moved into the apartment near Westbridge Academy, overlooking the Hudson River. The view stretched forever bridges, rooftops, and the shimmering reflection of dawn. For the first time, Lila had her own desk, her own bookshelves. Elena found herself working fewer hours, taking a position at the Foundation's Community Outreach Department, a role Ethan insisted she was perfect for. Life began to shift gently at first, then rapidly. Lila flourished at Westbridge, her inventions earning praise from professors twice her age. Ethan became a steady presence, attending her presentations, helping Elena navigate the new world of privilege and pressure. And yet, beneath the new rhythm of their lives, something unseen began to stir. Late one night, as rain streaked down the apartment windows, Elena's phone buzzed with a blocked number. She hesitated, then answered. A familiar voice slithered through the speaker. You've done well for yourself, mi amor. I see you finally found a man to replace me. Her blood ran cold. Carlos. I saw the news article, he continued, his tone both amused and venomous. Our little genius on the front page, smiling next to her billionaire benefactor. Touching. Elena's grip on the phone tightened. Leave us alone. Relax, Carlos said. I just want to see my daughter. I have rights, don't I? You lost those the day you walked out. He chuckled darkly. Oh, I wouldn't be so sure. People love a good redemption story. The estranged father trying to reconnect with his prodigy daughter makes headlines, especially if that story involves a billionaire. Elena's breath caught. Don't you dare. Click. The line went dead. Outside, thunder rolled over the river. Inside, Elena sank into a chair, trembling. For the first time since that miraculous night at the hospital, she felt the sharp edge of fear return. Because Carlos Rodriguez wasn't just watching anymore. He was planning something. Spring crept into New York. Quietly blooming magnolias in Central Park. Soft drizzle, glistening on sidewalks. And the kind of fragile calm that makes you forget storms ever happen. For the Crawfords and the Rodriguezes, life had begun to feel almost normal again. But normal never lasts long when ghosts remember where you live. Saturday mornings had become their new ritual. Ethan Crawford would meet Elena and Lila for breakfast at the cafe near Westbridge Academy. A cozy spot where sunlight spilled across wooden tables, and the smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air. That morning, Lila was animatedly explaining her new robotics project, while Noah showed her his latest Minecraft world. You're building prosthetic hands? Ethan asked, impressed. Lila nodded. For kids who can't afford them. My design uses recycled materials and 3D printing. Total cost, $22. Ethan smiled. You realize you're doing what billion-dollar companies can't? She shrugged shyly. I just want people to feel whole again. Across the table, Elena watched the exchange with quiet pride. For months now, She had seen her daughter transform confident, curious, unafraid to dream big. Ethan had become more than a benefactor. He was family in every way but name. Yet that word family still felt fragile. When breakfast ended, Lila and Noah ran ahead toward the fountain outside, laughing. Elena turned to gather her purse and froze. At the far end of the cafe, near the window, a man was staring at them. His face half hidden behind sunglasses, a smirk tugging at his lips. Carlos Rodriguez. Her pulse spiked. She whispered, "Ethan, don't look now," but Ethan followed her gaze anyway. His expression hardened instantly. Carlos stood, straightening his jacket, and began to walk toward them slow, deliberate steps that carried the arrogance of someone who believed he still had power. "Been a long time, mi amor," he said smoothly, ignoring Ethan completely. "You look expensive." "Leave, Carlos," Elena said sharply, standing between him and Lila. "Relax," he said with a fake chuckle. "I'm just saying hello. A father can't visit his daughter?" Ethan stepped forward, his voice low and even. "You lost that privilege when you disappeared." Carlos tilted his head. "Ah, the famous Mr. Crawford. I was wondering when I'd get to meet the man replacing me." Elena clenched her fists. "You were never replaced. You left," he smirked. "And yet here you are sitting with him, your daughter on scholarship, living in his apartment. Looks like my timing was just off." Ethan's jaw tightened. "I'm going to ask you once, Mr. Rodriguez. Leave them alone." Carlos's grin widened. "Or what? You'll call your lawyers? I've already spoken to one." Elena went cold. "What are you talking about?" "Joint custody," Carlos said simply. "Still legally valid." "I checked. You never filed to terminate my rights." Ethan's tone turned razor sharp. "You're bluffing." Carlos leaned closer, his voice dripping poison. "Am I? Because if I'm not, you might want to consider how it'll look in the press when a billionaire is accused of manipulating a minor and cutting her father out of her life." Ethan's face darkened. "You're using your daughter as leverage." "Don't act shocked," Carlos said lightly. "You'd do the same if your empire was collapsing. I just want my fair share, a little consulting fee for parental insight. Let's say $50,000 a month?" Quote, "Get out," Elena hissed, her voice shaking. "You won't touch my daughter again." Carlos smiled coldly. "You can't stop me, mi amor. The law's on my side now." Before Ethan could respond, a voice interrupted, firm, clear, trembling slightly. "Mom? What's going on?" Lila stood by the doorway, Noah beside her, eyes wide. Elena turned, forcing calm into her voice. "Nothing, mija. Go back outside." But Carlos stepped forward. "Hello, Princessa. You've grown." Lila froze. The name hit like a memory, faint, confusing, unwanted. "You're my dad?" Carlos nodded, feigning warmth. "That's right. I've missed you." Ethan stepped protectively between them. "You need to leave. Now." For a moment, it looked like Carlos might argue. Then his grin returned. "Fine. I'll be in touch." He turned and walked away, leaving a silence heavy enough to crush the air. Noah looked up at his father. Was that really her dad? Ethan's jaw tightened. Not anymore. That evening, the apartment felt colder than usual. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder murmuring beyond the skyline. Elena sat at the kitchen table, head in her hands. Across from her, Lila was quiet, a half-eaten sandwich untouched. "He looked different," she whispered. "Not like I remember." "He's changed," Elena said softly, "and not for the better." Lila's eyes glistened. "Does he want us back?" Elena shook her head. "He wants something else. Money. Control." Ethan stood by the window, watching lightning flash over the river. "He's going to make this legal," he said grimly. "Claim joint custody. Try to use Lila's success for leverage." Elena's voice trembled. "Can he do that?" "Not easily," Ethan replied. "But he'll try. I've seen men like him, they hide behind words like fatherhood and rights, when what they really want is profit. Lila looked up, her small voice steady. Then we'll fight him. Ethan turned, surprised. You're not afraid? I am, she said honestly. But being afraid doesn't help anyone. I want to know the truth. Everything he's planning. Ethan smiled faintly. You remind me of myself. At your age. Except braver. Elena reached for her daughter's hand. Promise me you'll stay close, Mija. Don't ever go anywhere with him. I promise. Thunder cracked outside, echoing through the apartment like a warning. Ethan's phone buzzed a text from an unknown number. You can't keep what's mine forever. He stared at the message, his reflection trembling in the glass. Outside, far below the tower, a black car idled across the street. Inside, Carlos Rodriguez watched the lights of the apartment, cigarette glowing between his fingers. He muttered to himself, voice low and venomous. If they think they can shut me out, they've forgotten who taught them how to survive. He flicked the cigarette into the rain, the ember dying in a hiss, but the fire in his eyes said otherwise. Because Carlos wasn't leaving this time. He was coming back for everything. The storm hadn't ended when morning came. It had only changed shape. Over Manhattan, gray clouds hung low like bruises, and the wind carried that uneasy stillness that always comes before something breaks. Inside the Crawford Foundation headquarters, the glass walls gleamed cold under fluorescent light. Ethan Crawford sat at the head of a long conference table, his phone buzzing with back-to-back alerts. His legal team had spent the night combing through family court archives, tracing every document tied to Carlos Rodriguez. The results weren't good. Joint custody still exists, said David Lang, Ethan's attorney, filed 10 years ago. Never revoked. He could, in theory, petition for visitation, or even claim decision-making rights over Lila's education. Ethan exhaled slowly. So a man who abandoned his family gets to waltz back and threaten a 12-year-old's future because of a piece of paper? That's the law, Lang said. But the good news is, his criminal record and absence give us leverage. We can contest his parental fitness. Ethan leaned back in his chair. Do it. Quietly. I don't want this becoming a circus. Lang nodded. Understood. But if he's already contacted the media, Ethan's jaw tightened. Then we make sure our story reaches them first. Oh. Across the river in Queens, Carlos Rodriguez watched a different kind of power play unfold. His apartment was small, walls stained with cigarette smoke. But on his laptop screen glowed a photograph that made him smile. Lila, at the Westbridge Science Fair, standing beside Ethan Crawford, both smiling for the cameras. America loves a rags-to-riches story, he muttered. Especially when it's built on a lie. He clicked record on a voice memo. Statement draft, version 1. He said aloud. Carlos Rodriguez, father of the so-called prodigy, Lila. Billionaire Ethan Crawford's foundation used my daughter's image to clean up his reputation. They stole her from me. The courts will hear my story soon. He stopped recording and leaned back, grinning. It wasn't just revenge he wanted. It was validation proof that he still mattered in a world that had moved on without him. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. We can make your story go viral, but first, we meet. 8 p.m. Pier 46. Carlos smirked. Finally, he whispered. That afternoon, in the Rodriguez-Crawford apartment overlooking the Hudson, Elena tried to keep her hands busy, folding laundry that didn't need folding. Her thoughts ran circles. Lila sat nearby, scribbling equations across her notebook. Her hair was tied in a messy bun, a pencil tucked behind her ear, looking every bit like a tiny scientist lost in thought. Elena broke the silence. You haven't said much since yesterday. And so, Lila didn't look up. I'm just thinking. About him? Lila paused, then nodded. He said he wants to see me. What if? He's telling the truth this time. Elena swallowed hard. Mija, the truth isn't always what people say. Sometimes it's what they want you to believe. But he's my dad. Elena's eyes softened. He was your father once. That doesn't mean he's safe now. Just then, the apartment door opened. Ethan stepped in. Rain still clinging to his coat. "We need to talk," he said quietly. He set a folder on the table, legal papers stamped in bold. "Rodriguez versus Crawford Foundation." Elena gasped. "He's suing?" "Not yet," Ethan replied. "But he's threatening to. Claims we manipulated his daughter. Denied him access. Used her likeness for profit." Lila's voice trembled. "That's not true." Ethan crouched to her level. "I know. But people like him don't care about truth. They care about noise." Elena rubbed her temples. "What does he want?" "Money," Ethan said flatly. "He's calling it compensation for emotional distress. 50,000 a month." Lila's eyes widened. "That's insane." Ethan forced a grim smile. "That's Carlos." Elena's hands trembled as she whispered, "What are we going to do?" Ethan straightened. "We fight back the right way. Through the law. Through facts. He can't use you anymore." Lila looked down at her notebook, her voice barely a whisper. "He's still using me." That night, rain returned relentless, soaking the city in silver. Carlos arrived at Pier 46, a cigarette glowing between his fingers, collar turned up against the wind. A black SUV was already parked near the water. The driver's window rolled down halfway. "You Rodriguez?" a voice asked. "Yeah, get in." Inside, the air smelled of leather and cold rain. A man in a suit, mid-40s. Calm eyes. Shark smile turned to him. "Name's Harlan Pierce. I represent several media outlets. Your story could be worth a lot." Carlos raised a brow. "How much?" Pierce smiled thinly. "Depends how much dirt you've got." Carlos smirked. "Plenty. I've got proof that billionaire Ethan Crawford's foundation uses underprivileged kids to build his image. My daughter's the star. A genius he's trying to buy." Pierce leaned in. "You willing to go public?" Carlos hesitated. "What's in it for me?" "Exposure, reputation, and maybe 6 figures if the story hits national syndication." "Oh." Carlos' grin spread. "You got yourself a deal." Pierce extended a hand. "Good. We'll start with a video statement. The more emotional, the better. Play the victim. Mention your daughter's innocence and how she's being exploited by the rich." Carlos nodded. "Don't worry. I can cry on cue." As he stepped out of the SUV, the rain hitting his face like cold applause, he didn't notice the small red dot blinking under the pier's railing, a security camera belonging to the Crawford Foundation's private investigation unit. Back in the apartment, Lila couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, watching headlights reflect off the wet streets below. Ethan entered quietly, setting down 2 mugs of hot cocoa. "Your mom's resting," he said. "I figured you could use something warm." "Ah." Lila smiled faintly. "Thanks." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the hum of the city. "Do you ever wish things could go back to how they were?" she asked softly. Ethan shook his head. "No. I wish they could go forward faster." Lila tilted her head. "Forward?" He nodded. "To the part where you're safe, where none of this noise matters." She sighed. "It's weird. He left when I was little. I used to dream he'd come back someday, that he'd say sorry, that he missed me." She blinked, eyes shining. "Now that he has, I just want him gone." Ethan's heart tightened. Sometimes the hardest part about growing up is realizing who deserves a second chance and who doesn't. She looked at him. "You think he'll stop?" "No," Ethan said honestly. "Men like him never stop until someone makes them." Lila looked down at her cocoa. "Then we have to make him." Ethan smiled a weary, proud smile. "You're braver than most adults I know." "Ma." 2 days later, the headlines hit. Father of child prodigy speaks out. Billionaire manipulates poor family for image boost. The article spread like wildfire. Photos of Lila beside Ethan appeared everywhere: morning shows, social media, gossip columns. Elena's phone buzzed non-stop. Reporters camped outside their building. Cameras flashed whenever Lila left for school. In the foundation's top floor, Ethan slammed the newspaper onto his desk. He went public. His assistant nodded grimly. It's trending nationwide. Ethan's eyes darkened. Then it's time we show the world who Carlos Rodriguez really is. He picked up the phone and dialed his head of security. Send me everything. Every arrest record. Every unpaid debt. Every file you've got on him. And make it fast. He hung up, staring out the window at the storm clouds gathering again. Down below, in the chaos of cameras and headlines, a single truth pulsed beneath all the noise. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was war, and neither side planned to lose. The city didn't sleep that week. Every street corner, every cafe television, every glowing phone screen seemed to echo the same story. Billionaire exploits, poor family for PR. What began as a tabloid headline had become a wildfire, consuming reputations faster than anyone could contain. For Ethan Crawford, it was déjà vu, the kind of crisis he thought he'd left behind in his corporate days. But this time, it wasn't his company on trial. It was his character. His family. Inside his foundation office, stacks of newspapers lay unread. What mattered were the people inside those pages, Lila and Elena, dragged into a storm they didn't create. He stood by the window, tie loosened, eyes hollow from sleepless nights. Across the desk sat Marion Ellis, his head of communications, her laptop open to a flood of news coverage. They're painting you as a manipulator, she said quietly. Carlos Rodriguez has played the perfect victim, the struggling father fighting for his daughter against the billionaire machine. The public loves that narrative. Ethan's jaw flexed. What about the truth? Truth doesn't trend, Marion said gently. Stories do. He turned away, fists clenched. Then we'll give them a better story. Across town, in their apartment, Elena scrolled through comment after comment on her phone, strangers debating her life, her daughter, her worth. How could a mother sell her child's genius? One wrote. That billionaire just wants control, another said. She set the phone down, shaking. Lila entered quietly, her school uniform still on, face pale. They followed me again after class, she said softly. 2 men with cameras. One of them shouted questions about Dad. Elena's heart clenched. Did they touch you? Lila shook her head. No, but it felt like they wanted to. Elena pulled her daughter close, whispering, They don't know you, mija. Don't let them steal your light. But her voice trembled with fear. That evening, Ethan arrived at the apartment, his face grim but determined. Pack a few things, he said. You're staying at my place for a while. Elena frowned. That's not necessary. It is, he cut in. The paparazzi know this address. I won't risk them harassing Lila. Lila looked up. Will it stop the stories? Ethan hesitated. Maybe not, but it'll keep you safe while we fix it. The next morning, a video appeared online. Grainy footage of Carlos sitting in his dim apartment, eyes red, voice breaking at just the right moments. I made mistakes, he said, staring into the camera. But I never stopped loving my daughter. She's all I have. And now the rich man who claims to care about her is taking her away, just like they always take from people like us. The clip ended with him wiping away a tear. By noon, it had 3 million views. Back in Ethan's penthouse, Lila sat on the couch watching the video in silence. When it ended, she turned to him. He's lying, she said simply. Ethan nodded. I know, but everyone believes him. He sighed. Because it's easier to believe pain than integrity. She frowned. Then show them the truth. He looked at her, that calm, logical brilliance in her young face. And what's the truth, Lila? That he left us. That he only came back when you helped us. Ethan smiled sadly. You think they'll believe that? They will if I tell them. Elena, standing nearby, shook her head. No. I won't let you stand in front of those cameras. They'll twist your words. Use your tears. Lila met her mother's eyes. Then I'll speak with facts, like a scientist. That night, in the Foundation's media room, Ethan's team set up cameras and lights. Lila sat on a stool, feet barely touching the floor, wearing a simple blue sweater and her school badge. Marion adjusted the mic. You sure about this? Lila nodded. Yes, I'm ready. The red light blinked on. She took a deep breath. My name is Lila Rodriguez, she began, her voice steady. 2 years ago, I was waiting for my mom at the hospital where she worked as a cleaner. I saw something in a boy's four that didn't look right. The doctor said I saved his life. That boy was Noah Crawford. She looked straight into the lens. Mr. Crawford didn't take me from my father. He gave me a chance to learn, to build, to give back. My father left years before that. I don't want money or fame. I just want peace for my family. She hesitated, then added quietly, if being helped by someone kind makes me a liar, then maybe the world needs more lies like that. When the recording stopped, the room was silent. Even Marion's usually professional composure cracked. She wiped her eyes discreetly. Ethan knelt beside Lila. You were incredible. She smiled faintly. I just told the truth. By morning, the video had spread faster than Carlos's smear campaign. Hashtags flipped overnight. Number Lila speaks. Number truth over greed. Number the real story. Public opinion shifted like a tide. People began digging into Carlos's background, his criminal charges, his gambling debts, the years he'd gone missing. Talk shows replayed Lila's quiet conviction on loop. One host summed it up perfectly. She didn't need to shout. She just needed to be honest. At a coffee shop downtown, Carlos watched it all unfold on his phone screen. Each refresh brought a new headline. Father's lies exposed. Public turns against Carlos Rodriguez. His jaw clenched. No. He slammed his fist against the table, startling the barista. She ruined everything. He grabbed his coat and stormed out, his fury boiling over into something darker. That night, as the city lights shimmered across the Hudson, the Rodriguez-Crawford apartment sat in uneasy calm. Lila was asleep. Elena washed dishes softly, humming to keep herself grounded. Ethan stood by the window, talking quietly into his phone. Yes. I'll press charges if he contacts them again. Restraining order. Full stop. He hung up, running a hand through his hair. It's almost over, he said. Elena smiled faintly. Almost. A sudden noise outside cut through the metallic click of a door handle. Ethan froze. Did you lock? Before he could finish, the apartment door swung open. Carlos Rodriguez stood there, soaked from the rain, eyes wild. Where's my daughter? He demanded. Elena gasped, stepping in front of Lila's room. Get out! Ethan moved toward him. Don't do this, Carlos. Carlos laughed bitterly. Oh, I'm past that. You stole everything from me. My family, my name, my legacy. He lunged forward, knocking over a lamp. Glass shattered. Elena screamed. Ethan grabbed him, the two men struggling in the flickering light. And then a flash. A candle knocked over. A spark. The curtains caught first. Fire spread fast. Lila! Elena shouted, running toward her daughter's room as smoke filled the air. Flames roared up the walls, the heat blinding. Ethan pulled Carlos back, shouting, Get out! But Carlos's eyes darted toward the room. My daughter! For one brief, twisted second, instinct overrode rage. He pushed past Ethan straight into the fire. Outside, sirens wailed, slicing through the storm. Firefighters rushed in, neighbors screaming on the sidewalk. Elena clutched Lila in her arms, both coughing from smoke, their faces streaked with ash. Ethan stumbled out last, collapsing beside them, his arm burned but alive. Behind him, through the window, Flames swallowed the apartment whole. A paramedic shouted, "We've got 3 survivors!" Elena turned toward the inferno, eyes wide with disbelief. "Carlos." Ethan looked back too, his voice low, hollow. "He didn't make it." The fire crackled, sparks rising into the night sky, a requiem for the man who destroyed everything he touched. By dawn, only smoke and silence remained. Lila sat wrapped in a blanket, trembling but alive. "It's over," she whispered. Ethan nodded slowly, watching firefighters douse the last embers. "Yes," he said softly. "But endings have a way of starting something new." By sunrise, the smell of smoke still clung to everything: hair, clothes, memory. The fire trucks had long gone, but the street in front of the building was sealed off, littered with ash and twisted metal. Wrapped in a gray blanket, Lila Rodriguez sat on the back of an ambulance, her small hands clutching a cup of water she didn't drink. Elena sat beside her, silent, a bandage across her arm where she'd burned it, breaking a window to reach her daughter. Ethan Crawford stood a few feet away, talking to firefighters, his once pristine shirt stained with soot and blood. His eyes tired, hollow, drifted often toward Lila, as if checking she was still real. "Cause of ignition?" he asked the fire chief. "Accelerant. Likely gasoline," the man replied. "Someone set this deliberately." Ethan's stomach tightened. "Carlos?" The firefighter nodded grimly. "Judging by what's left of his jacket, yeah. We found traces of the fuel can inside." Ethan turned toward the rising sun, the city skyline glowing faintly orange through the haze. The irony wasn't lost on him. Carlos had started the fire that consumed him. 2 days later, the hospital smelled of antiseptic and lavender air freshener, an odd mix that made Elena feel more nervous than calm. Lila lay in bed, attached to a monitor that beeped softly. Her lungs had suffered mild smoke damage, but doctors said she'd make a full recovery. When Ethan entered the room, carrying a small bouquet of white lilies, Lila smiled weakly. "You didn't have to bring flowers," she rasped. "They're from Noah," Ethan said gently. "He says heroes deserve something pretty." Lila laughed, then coughed. "Tell him I'm no hero." Ethan sat beside her. "You are, kiddo. You ran toward your mother, when most adults would have run away." Her smile faded. "He didn't mean to burn it all down, did he?" Ethan hesitated. "I think he meant to scare us, not destroy everything." Lila looked at the window, where spring sunlight glowed faintly through the curtain. He looked so angry, but also lost, like he didn't even know what he was doing anymore. Elena, sitting in the corner, wiped a tear discreetly. "That was your father, mija. Always chasing something he couldn't hold." Later that afternoon, a detective visited. He was polite, somber, and efficient, the kind of man who'd seen too many endings. "Mr. Crawford," he said, handing over a manila folder. "We found this in what's left of Rodriguez's car." Inside were letters, drafts, notes, unsent apologies. The handwriting was uneven, desperate. One read, "I wanted to be her father again, but I didn't know how. Every time I saw her, she looked less like me, and more like someone who'd outgrown me." Another said, "If this doesn't work, maybe they'll finally understand what I was worth." Ethan closed the folder slowly, a heavy ache rising in his chest. "He wasn't evil," he murmured. "Just broken." The detective nodded. "Most of them are." Oh. A week later, the Crawford Foundation held a quiet memorial not for Carlos, but for resilience. The press had finally gone silent, the headlines replaced with stories of bravery and recovery. Lila stood on the small stage, a cast still on her wrist, reading from a paper she'd written herself. "Fire destroys," she said softly. "But sometimes it clears the ground so new things can grow. My father made choices that hurt people, but I won't let those choices define me or my family. We survived because people chose love instead of fear." The room fell still. Even hardened reporters lowered their cameras. Ethan stood at the back, his hands clasped, watching her with a mix of pride and awe. She wasn't the timid girl who once peeked into a hospital room. She was something larger now, a survivor, a voice. When the applause ended, Elena joined her on stage, wrapping her arms around her daughter. That evening, they returned to Ethan's penthouse, their temporary refuge, until the new apartment was ready. The city lights shimmered below, like 1,000 tiny candles. On the balcony, Lila leaned against the railing, her eyes reflecting the skyline. "Everything feels different now," she said. "Like the world burned down and grew back smaller." Ethan nodded. "Sometimes, that's how you rebuild. One brick, one truth, at a time." She looked up at him. "Do you think he's at peace?" Ethan thought of the letters, the pain between the lines. "I think he finally stopped running." Lila's gaze softened. "Then maybe I can too." Elena joined them, sliding her hand into her daughter's. "We start fresh. Together. Why? 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 And Elena." Ethan smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "A new beginning." Down below, a breeze lifted the last traces of ash from the riverbank, scattering them into the night. The fire had taken everything but in its wake. It had left the one thing none of them expected: freedom. The story of Lila Rodriguez and the Crawford Foundation carries a message far deeper than the triumph of a child prodigy. It is a reflection of how compassion can rewrite destiny. Beneath its cinematic tension and heartbreak lies a universal truth. Greatness is not born from privilege, but from resilience, kindness, and the courage to rise after being burned. The tale reminds us that pain does not have to define who we are. It can refine who we become. Through Lila's innocence and Elena's perseverance, the narrative captures the quiet heroism of everyday people. Those who keep working, loving, and believing, even when life offers nothing but hardship. Ethan Crawford, the billionaire with scars of his own, embodies redemption through empathy, proof that true wealth is measured not in dollars, but in how many lives we choose to lift. At its core, this story speaks to the power of second chances, not just for those who fall, but for those who dare to forgive, to rebuild, and to love again. It urges us to see beyond class, beyond appearances, and recognize that every act of goodness, no matter how small, ripples outward to change the world. The fire that destroyed Lila's home becomes a metaphor for life's trials. Everything we lose can become the soil for something new to grow. Ultimately, the new dawn is not about tragedy, but transformation. It reminds every reader, especially those who have known loss, that healing is possible, that love can transcend fear, and that the most powerful miracles often begin with a single act of humanity. It is a story of hope rekindled, proof that even from ashes, light can rise again.